Well, the Joint Finance Committee voted to raise state park and camping fees. Governor Walker is proposing to eliminate tax dollars to the state park system while raising those user fees. So, Rick Esenberg, is this the right approach to Wisconsin's parks, trails, and recreation areas?
Well, I mean, I think you can make a powerful argument that people who use something that is not generally utilized. I mean, I don't know what percentage of people in the state of Wisconsin actually use the park system, but my guess is it's not particularly high, right? Most people won't use it or won't use it very often. And so it seems to me that it's the type of service that lends itself to charging a user fee. And it seems to me to be a fairer way to pay for parks than simply imposing a tax on everyone, including probably the majority of people who simply won't be using those parks.
What do you say, Lon?
Well, I think that's unduly pragmatic and not a very good economic policy. Again, not valuing the resources that Wisconsin has to offer and misunderstanding how it contributes to economic development. So in this example, from a northern Wisconsin point of view, think of all the people who come to northern Wisconsin for the forests and the parks and the fishing and the kayaking and the canoeing and all those recreational things. And they buy boats and fishing equipment. They stop at the restaurants. They stop at gas stations and grocery stores. I mean, I live up here because of the national and state forests. All these things are what makes Wisconsin valuable.
You know, if in fact these parks are such an economic boon, and if in fact they attract people who come to, northern Wisconsin and spend money on all of these things, then they ought to be willing, these people who come and they use these parks ought to be willing to pay for them. It's not clear to me why people in southeastern Wisconsin, including, quite frankly, very low-income people who don't have the opportunity to go out and use these parks in northern Wisconsin ought to be asked to pay for them. I mean, generally speaking, we find that when we attach prices to things, right? When we ask people, what is a service worth to you? What is a product worth to you? And we charge them a price for it, we get the most efficient allocation of resources. And I don't think that there's any reason not to do that with parks. And if we decide later on that, we've got a little bit of a problem because maybe some low-income folks don't have access to the parks and, we need to do something about that. I think the idea that parks are a service that have a point of entry and departure, and that you can charge people to go in and you can charge people to go out, and you can price them at something which approximates their value, which Lon has said they have value, and we talked about people coming up to northern Wisconsin and what a wonderful economic boon that is. Well, then we ought to be able to capture that economic boon by pricing admission to the parks.
Boyd in Watoma joins us. Hi, Boyd.
I have to respectfully disagree with one of your guests. He talked about, why should people, if they don't use it, pay for it? You can frame that in so many different ways. When I took public transport in Milwaukee and I didn't have a car, should my tax dollars go toward the highways and stuff like that? I had no problem doing that. But in turn, people who use the highways should have to pay for public transport. I mean, this is what taxes are all about. Maybe you don't use all the services that are there, but let's have a sense of social responsibility and a sense of community. And I'll take my answers off the air. Thanks.
The problem with, and the reason that we generally use prices is they're an efficient way to allocate resources. Prices are a way of asking people, how much is this worth to you? And I don't have any way to determine how much a particular service or a particular product is worth to people. I don't have that kind of all-pervasive knowledge. I know that there are people who think that the government can somehow do that it can sit down and we can all vote on how to allocate resources. But I don't think we actually have that kind of meta-knowledge. I don't think that any one of us or any group of us can do that. And the beauty of a market system and the beauty of prices is that we don't have to do that. We aggregate the thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of decisions that people make about what to do with their resources and their time, and generally speaking, we get the most efficient allocation of resources. And there's sometimes that we depart from that because there are certain things for which a market doesn't work as well. Highways might be one of them. The military is, generally seen as another example where, it's really hard to charge people to do that. Sometimes we have externalities. Sometimes we want to intervene because, we want to, provide something to people who simply don't have the resources to pay for it. But I think that the presumption that we should price things is, generally speaking, a good one. I mean, it's done. It's done well for us. Corporate naming rights for parks. I wouldn't rule it out. It doesn't scare me. I don't think there's anything evil about that. I think that generally speaking, voluntary is better than mandatory. It's better than coercive, and I think funding the taxes through the choices that people make rather than the commands that we impose upon them is a good thing.